Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. This is a story about what if ANBU Naruto parents return with sister. Before I start, please support for more amazing content and do consider subscribing to my channel and share this video with your friends. This is written by PURPLESHADOW95 and link in the description and support writer. Let's start the video. Chapter 1. Family one last time. Naruto woke up from the light of the sun, which was shining through the window of his bedroom. He turned to the side to look at the time on the alarm clock. It was 5:55. He woke up 5 minutes before the alarm. Again. He pushed the blankets of him and slowly sat up. Then he smiled. Today was the day. The day where his dad would finally start teaching him to throw kunai. He hurriedly got up and ran to his closet and took out a pair of black shorts and a white shirt with a red swirl, representing the Uzumaki, his mother's clan, on the front. He put them on and ran out of his room downstairs. The moment he arrived downstairs, the alarm clock in Naruto's room started to ring. He had forgotten to put it out. But Naruto just ignored it and ran straight into the living room. "Good morning," Naruto said. Minato Namikaze, who sat on the couch in the living room reading a book. Minato looked like an older version of Naruto. Same blonde hair, well slightly longer, and same blue eyes, even though their eye shape was slightly different. The biggest difference between the two, with the exception of the age and height, Minato being around 6 feet and Naruto barely 3.5 feet tall, was the fact that Naruto had 3 whisker marks on each cheeks. Minato wore the traditional blue shinobi pants and the blue sweater with red swirls on both shoulders. He turned to his 4-year-old son and smiled. "Ready for some training, I presume?" "Good morning, Tu-chan. I'm ready. Let's go, let's go." The 4-year-old boy said, running to his father and pulling on his arm. He was smiling brightly. "Haha. Alright, I got it," Minato said, laughing all the while. The two of them walked outside. Well, Minato walked. Naruto kept jumping and smiling while still pulling on his father's arm. Arriving on the porch, both put on their shinobi sandals and walked into the open field. "Alright, Naruto. Unfortunately, I only have an hour to teach you. I need to head to work afterwards. But I can at least show you the right way to throw the weapons," Minato said. "Yup, I know. I'll give it my all," Naruto said, grinning. Minato smiled at that. He walked into the middle of the field and pointed to the target. A circular piece of wood where the middle had been marked by a black point and different sizes of circles spreading to the outside. "Alright, Naruto. This is your target. Your goal is obviously to hit the center. The closer you get to the center, the better. You will start with a distance of 30 feet from the target. We will increase the distance once you've gotten better," Minato said, and reached into his kunai pouch that he had on his back and took out a kunai. He crouched down and motioned for Naruto to come closer. "Alright, Naruto. I want you to listen carefully now, okay?" Minato said seriously once Naruto had reached him. Naruto looked into his father's eyes that had turned serious. Gone was the playfulness. Naruto turned serious as well and nodded to his father. "Very good. Now this is important. This is a dangerous weapon and you can seriously hurt yourself if you're not careful. This isn't like nin or taijutsu. You understand?" Minato asked his son. "Yes. I'll be careful," Naruto said seriously. Minato nodded and handed Naruto the kunai. "This is a normal kunai. The kind that everyone uses. One day I'll teach you to use mine, but until then you will learn to use the normal ones. The kunai is separated in 3 parts. The point, the handle and the ring. You can use kunai to fight in close range and in long range. Because of that you have a handle. To throw, you hold the kunai like this," Minato said while taking the kunai from Naruto and holding it between his point and middle finger. "Once you're confident with throwing one kunai, you can increase the number of kunai you are throwing." "Do you know why there is a ring?" Minato asked while handing the kunai back to Naruto. "To attach a wire." "Right," Naruto stated. "Correct. Those wires will be lifesavers someday." Minato smiled at his son. Then he got up. "Okay. Let's look at the stance. It's important that you have a stable position. At least when you're learning it," Minato said while spreading his legs a bit and bending his knees slightly. He then took a new kunai out of his pouch and threw it. The kunai hit bullseye. "Like this," Minato stated while turning back to his son. "Now you try it." "Hi," Naruto said while taking the same position his father had taken. He then threw the kunai. It flew about 10 feet past the target. "Can I have another kunai?" Naruto asked while extending his hand to his father. Minato just handed him a new one, which Naruto took, and then he tried again. The target flying past the target once again, but this time a bit closer. This went on for half an hour. The kunai had now hit the target on the circle farthest from the center. "Well, someone is making progress," the voice of a woman said from the house. Both Minato and Naruto turned around and started grinning the same way. There on the porch stood a beautiful woman in a green dress with long red hair and purple eyes. The most noticeable feature about the woman was however her big belly. Showing clearly that the woman was highly pregnant. "Good morning Kacchan," Naruto said while running to his mother and gave her a hug. Then he put his hand on her belly. "Good morning little one." "Nai-chan morning," said a small toddler from behind Kushina. He had spiky, short red hair, the same purple eyes of their mother, and was wearing a blue jumpsuit. "Morning K." Naruto said to his 2-year-old brother and ruffled his hair. "Morning Kushina, K," said Minato who came up behind Naruto. "I'd say it's time for breakfast. Don't you think?" Kushina said and saw how the faces of both Minato and Naruto lit up and both started to grin. God, these two are so like, Kushina thought and smiled along with the two oldest men in the Namikaze family. With that, the family all went inside and ate their breakfast. Once they were done, Minato got up and put on his flak jacket and his personal coat with the insignia Yondaime written on the back. "Alright guys. I gotta run," he said, ruffling both Kei and Naruto's hair while passing, resulting in both of them complaining and Minato laughing and kissing Kushina on the cheek. "See you tonight. And Naruto. Don't overdo your training," he said while throwing him a kunai pouch. "And be careful with that." Smiling one last time, he disappeared in a yellow flash. "Sweet. Finally got my own weapons," Naruto said while attaching the pouch on his back like his father had it. He then looked at the clock. It was 7:30. "Kacchan, can I leave? I'm meeting with Itachi," he asked his mother. "Sure. But be sure to be back for dinner," Kushina said while tidying up the table. "Got it. Love you Kacchan. K, see you later," Naruto said while running out of the house. "Be careful," he heard his mother shout after him. Naruto arrived in the clearing where he and Itachi usually trained at 7:45. 15 minutes later than usual. The clearing was in the middle of the forest and in the trees hung the same targets that Naruto had just practiced on in his yard. The two of them had started their training together about 1 year ago. Both were doing really well for children so young. And soon they would start going to the academy. The first half year they had started training, they had mostly worked on stamina and on getting their chakra reserve bigger. They had met about 3 times a week at that time. They didn't want to overdo it. They had only started to meet daily 3 months ago and they had been making a lot of progress. And they planned on keeping up the hard work. "You're late," was the first thing he heard when he arrived. He turned to his best friend that was sitting in the clearing with his eyes closed. Itachi had black hair that reached shortly above his shoulders and he wore a blue shirt with a collar and black shorts. "I know, sorry. But Two-chan taught me to throw kunai today. Look at that, he even got me my own pouch," Naruto said and turned to show him his kunai pouch. Itachi opened his eyes to look at Naruto. His eyes as black as his hair. "I know. You wouldn't shut up about it yesterday," he said. "Well, I guess that means that we can start to practice kunai throwing together now," he added and stretched out his hand to Naruto. "Haha, sorry about that. Yeah, I'll catch up to your throwing in no time," Naruto said, grinning a foxy grin and helped Itachi up by grabbing his hand. Standing next to each other, one could see that Itachi was slightly bigger than Naruto. Around 3.7 feet tall. "We'll see about that. I did learn 3 months before you." "Well, Two-chan didn't want to rush it, so it's okay." "The usual warm-up?" Itachi asked. "How about adding an additional round today?" "Sounds good." With that, they both started to run. They ran a total of 15 laps around the training field that was next to their clearing. This took them about 1 hour. Then they did a round of push-ups, pull-ups and sit-ups. Then they stretched. By the time they were done with warm-up it was 9:15. "Alright. How about starting with chakra control?" Naruto asked. "Sure," Itachi said, and soon enough, both were running up and down a tree. They did that for another hour before taking a break. "By the way, how's that coming along?" Itachi asked, making sure not to talk too loudly. They both knew that Naruto's father had an ANBU on their watch. Just to make sure they didn't hurt themselves. They had both noticed his presence since the first day he was there, since he didn't try to hide his presence at all. They had even asked him for some tips sometimes. After all, ANBU were the elite. It would be stupid not to take advantage of the fact that he was there. And with that, it wasn't so boring for the ANBU either. It was a win-win situation. The reason Itachi spoke so quietly was because Naruto had been working on something without his father's knowledge. Well, without anyone's knowledge. Except Itachi obviously. "Well, I think I'd be able to pull it off. But it's hard to tell really, I mean, I can't really try it out now, can I? That's why I want to work on chakra control until then. It's the only thing that's making me slightly uncomfortable. You know. Yeah, I'm surprised you even got the technique down. I mean, it's not like your parents taught it to you. And they're the only ones that have it written down." "Haha, yeah. I really thought they'd catch me when I copied the technique from my father's office. But like I said, I don't know if it would actually work," Naruto said, sounding worried. Itachi looked at his friend and gave him one of his seldom smile. Don't worry. I'm sure you'll be able to do it if necessary. Naruto stopped in his run and looked to Itachi. He closed his eyes and smiled. That guy always knew what to tell him. Thanks, he murmured under his breath. But he knew that Itachi heard it. In order to calm Naruto's worries about chakra control. They mainly worked on that after the break as well. This time by doing water walking, which was harder than tree walking obviously, but they had been training it for about a week now and thus didn't fall into the water once. They had made their training harder by avoiding rubber balls that the two of them threw at each other. The training was then interrupted by a loud growl. How about lunch?" Naruto asked from the middle of the lake and put his hand behind his head while smiling sheepishly. "But no ramen today," Itachi said seriously, which resulted in a pouting Naruto. After some lunch at the barbecue restaurant, Naruto and Itachi resumed their training. Naruto stood in the middle of the clearing with one kunai in each hand. Itachi stood 20 feet from him with a bag full of stones. "You ready?" Itachi asked, grabbing a few stones from the bag. "Yup. Go ahead," Naruto answered while looking closely at Itachi. Itachi took the signal and started throwing the stones at Naruto. Naruto meanwhile did his best to deflect the stones with his kunai. He was doing a pretty good job since only a few actually hit him and none of them hit him in a lethal place. Once Itachi was out of stones, a rustling of the leaves informed the two of the arrival of the ANBU. "That wasn't so bad, Naruto-kun. You sure improved since last time. And this is your first time deflecting with actual kunai and no wooden sticks," the ANBU said. The ANBU was about 6 feet tall and had short brown hair. He wore the traditional ANBU uniform consisting of black clothing, a gray flak jacket, metal arm guards and gloves, ninja sandals with spikes for traveling into mountainous regions, 3 ninja pouches on his back waist, and a signature spiral tattoo on his shoulder. He had the mask of a panda. "Yo panda. Thanks for the compliment, but I'm far from my goal. I'm still not fast enough. And had those stones been kunai, I wouldn't be able to walk now," Naruto said while picking up the stones that were around him. Now was after all Itachi's turn. "You're still better than me though," Itachi said, not looking up and picking up the stones together with Naruto. "You guys," Panda said with a sigh. "It's not like kids your age are usually even training," he thought, shaking his head. "Those two aren't even aware that they are already mid-genin level. With the exception of kunai throwing, which they have only just started. But really. And that with barely being 5 years old, freaking prodigies, they'll be some scary shinobi one day." Panda thought while looking at the two kids picking up stones. "That's only because I've been working on that more. Your aim is a lot better than mine. So we're even," Naruto said, picking up the last stone. "Okay. Your turn," Naruto said, taking his position. It was 6 in the evening when Itachi and Naruto put an end to their training. They had finished their training for the day with some ninjutsu. Panda had agreed to teach them a new jutsu. In the past year he had already taught them the 3 jutsus they usually would only learn at the academy. The Bushin no Jutsu, Clone Jutsu, the Kawarimi no Jutsu, Body Replacement Jutsu, and the Henge no Jutsu, Transformation Jutsu. Both Itachi and Naruto had had little trouble with learning them but were currently still working on mastering them. Meaning, they were trying to use them without hand signs. Today, to Naruto's and Itachi's delight, he had taught them the Shunshin no Jutsu, Body Flicker Jutsu. Of course, this being a D-rank jutsu, unlike the 3 academy jutsus which were E-rank, the Shunshin was harder to learn. And both had to accept that they would need some more training to be able to perform the technique flawlessly. "With that, I guess I'll see you guys tomorrow?" Panda asked the 2 boys that were doing some stretches to finish with training. "Nope. Tomorrow is my birthday, so I'm going to take a day off." And Itachi promised his mom to watch his younger brother for the day. "Guess you won't need to play babysitter tomorrow, Panda. We'll see you the day after though," Naruto said while finishing his stretch and standing up. "Oh. You're getting old, Naruto-kun. Soon you won't need me to be here anymore," Panda said in mock sadness. "Well, I gotta leave. See you," Itachi said while waving to the 2 that were now bickering. "Ah. John," and Naruto said while grinning and waving after the disappearing Itachi. That means my job is done for now," Panda said with his hands on his hips. "By the way, Panda. What do you report to my father all the time? All we do during the day?" No, of course not. I'm only supposed to make sure you don't get hurt. He doesn't even know that you guys realized I'm watching you. Even less that I am teaching you. Basically, I'm not reporting anything. If you were to get hurt, which until now you thankfully didn't, I would go and report." Suka, well, I have to head home as well or Kachan is going to get mad," Naruto said and shivered at the thought. An action mimicked by Panda, who apparently had already met an angry Kushina. "John, Panda. And thanks for helping us today," Naruto said, tuning around and heading home. "John and Naruto-kun. Anytime," he answered and waved back. "The Daemon," Naruto shouted the moment he entered the house. Okarinasai Naruto. He heard his mother from the kitchen. Bakari Nai-chan. Kei said while running as fast as his 2-year-old legs could carry him to his older brother and clung to Naruto's leg. You okay? Naruto, why don't you go take a shower? Dinner will be ready soon. Kushina said while looking out of the kitchen. Kei, you have to let go of your brother or he won't be able to move. She said while chuckling. Yada. Kei said grabbing Naruto's leg even more. That is when Naruto was saved by the appearance of his father. The moment Minato flashed into the living room, Kei ran over to him and held onto his leg like he had previously done with Naruto's leg. Bakari 2-chan Minato said all 3 of the Namikaze family that were already present. Naruto then used the moment to run up the stairs into the bathroom, he quickly took a shower and pulled on clean clothes. He then went back down and sat down at the table. Dinner went by peacefully. After they had all finished, Naruto and Minato cleaned up the kitchen and Kushina brought Kei to bed. Then the 3 that were left sat down on the sofa in the living room. Alright Naruto, there is something I have to talk to you about. It's about tomorrow, Minato said while glancing at Kushina every now and then. Dear Ka-chan and I went to see Tsunade again today, and… Ah-chan. Is something not alright? Is it the little one? Naruto interrupted in a panicked voice. This caused both Minato and Kushina to smile. Naruto had called his new sibling little one since he found out that he was going to be an older brother again. And he already proved to be a great brother. Caring for his unborn sibling right away. No Naruto. Everything is alright. It's just Tsunade said Kushina would most likely give birth sometime tomorrow, so we won't be able to celebrate your birthday like we had planned. I'm sorry. This caused 2 different reactions from Naruto. The first one was confusion. But that was replaced after a few seconds by a grin plastered on Naruto's face. That foxy grin he and his father had in common. So the little one is going to have his birthday on the same day as me? That's so cool. Naruto said, surprising his parents. And don't worry about celebrating my birthday. We'll do it together with celebrating the little ones once things have calmed down from Ka-chan giving birth. When will you be leaving? Minato and Kushina were dumbstruck by their son's reaction. They had expected a lot, but not this. Not only was Naruto accepting happily the fact that none would be present on his birthday, he had already realized that they would certainly leave soon to prepare for the birth, like they had done the 2 previous times as well. Not that Naruto should actually remember that. Do-chan? Naruto asked in confusion as all Minato did was stare at him. Alright we leave in the morning. To make sure we have all in place and all. Minato answered after coming out of his shock. Naruto nodded. He had thought that it would be like that. Then, is it alright if I head to Itachi's tomorrow? Both Mikoto Abasan and Fugaku Ajisan are out and Itachi is watching Sasuke-kun. I'm sure Kei will enjoy the time he can spend with Sasuke-kun. That would be great Naruto. Thank you. Kushina said smiling fondly at her oldest son. He is such a good brother. Naruto. You need to promise me something alright. Minato stated seriously. I know 2-chan. If the Kyuubi gets free, head to the shelter and don't come out until the all clear sounds. Naruto said just as seriously as his father. Again Minato and Kushina were taken aback by their son's reaction. Apparently he remembered the talk Minato had had with his student Hada Kakashi back when Kei was born. Naruto had been right beside them that day. But to think that he remembered that was surprising. Minato had made Kakashi swear that he would watch Naruto all day and to bring him to the shelter if Minato was not able to hold the Kyuubi back. Correct? Try to find Kakashi if that were happen. Alright. Minato asked after gaining his control back. Got it. But 2-chan, Ka-chan please come back safe alright. Naruto said looking down. The worry was written all over his face at the thought of his parents facing the 9-tailed fox. Of course. Dadabane. And then we'll celebrate your birthday. That's a promise. Kushina said raising her fist. That's right. We'll be fine. Minato added with a secure smile. We were able to keep the Kyuubi from escaping twice. We'll manage a 3rd time as well. This caused Naruto to smile. That's right. They're 2 of the most powerful shinobi. And there's still that if worst comes to worst. Naruto thought while gaining some confidence back. Alright Naruto. You better get to sleep now. Kushina and I will leave before the sun's up in the morning, so we'll see each other again the day after tomorrow with your new sibling. Okay. I'll see you soon then. Naruto said while walking over to his parents and hugging them. Love you too Chan, Ka-chan. We love you too. Was the answer of his parents. Morning came very fast. That is at least what Naruto thought. He turned to the alarm clock on his bedside. It was 5:30. The sun hadn't even gone up yet, but Naruto knew that his parents had already left. He turned on his back again and looked at the ceiling. He had managed to put up a strong front the evening before, but even though he really did believe in his parents to keep the Kyuubi at bay, he couldn't help but feel really nervous and worried about the outcome of today. Enough of that. I have to get ready. Naruto thought and got up. He went to his closet that was situated across his window. He took out a pair of white pants and put on a blue t-shirt. Over that he put on a gray sleeveless sweater. Next he attached the kunai pouch to his back like he had done yesterday. He then took a deep breath and walked over to his bookshelf that was across from his bed. It was a simple one with 3 rows to put in his books and his scrolls. He took out all the books of the middle row and put them to the side. Most of the books were about sealing. And Artie had been learning for the past 2 years. One would think that with 2 parents who were both seal masters, Naruto would have actually asked them for help. But Naruto had not done so. All the books he had now put to the side were copies of his father's office. The reason his parents had not found out about the fact that he had been studying Fuinjutsu was because all of the books had a cover that did not match the content. Like the first book about sealing, Fuinjutsu. First Steps Without Blowing Up written by Jiraiya had a cover of the bedtime story Bubbles the Dog and His Adventures. A story Naruto had greatly enjoyed as a toddler. Now the reason for keeping the fact that Naruto was learning Fuinjutsu a secret was because his parents would never have agreed to teach him if they had known of his reasons. So Naruto just kept quiet from the very beginning. Naruto took once again a deep breath, put his head in the row and looked up. The seal he had drawn month ago was still there, like he had drawn it. Good, he thought. Time to get it out. Need to have it with me at all time now. Naruto got his head out again and put the palm of his hand on the seal and then activated the seal by channeling chakra through his palm into the seal. There was a poof of smoke and out came a scroll that now lay in Naruto's hand. Naruto turned it around and looked at it carefully, making sure it had not been damaged in any way. He was after all still far from being proficient with seals. Nodding to himself, he got up and put the scroll into his pocket. It wasn't that big after all. Naruto then put all of the books back into the shelf and slowly went downstairs. Kei was still fast asleep and wouldn't wake up for at least another hour. So, waiting for Kei to wake up, Naruto went into the yard and practiced his kunai throwing. It was around 7 o'clock that Naruto heard Kei crying from his room. So Naruto packed up all of his kunai again and went up to his brother's nursery. "Good morning, Kei. No need to cry, I'm here now," Naruto said and went to pick up his brother from the crib. Kei stopped crying after seeing Naruto and started to giggle. "Nai-chan." "Morning," Kei said, still giggling. "Well, someone is happy to see me," Naruto said, smiling fondly at his younger brother. "We're going to visit Sasuke-kun today. How do you like that?" "Yay," Kei said, throwing his little arms into the air. Alright. Let's get you dressed then, shall we?" Naruto said and went over to his brother's closet and took out a pair of long brown pants and a red shirt as well as a black sweater. He then proceeded to clothe Kei. The two of them then went downstairs and Naruto made them a small breakfast consisting of cereals. "Nai-chan, where are Ka-chan and Tu-chan?" Kei asked after eating his cereals. Ka-chan and Tu-chan will be back soon. They went to get our new sibling. You're going to be a big brother, Kei," Naruto answered while cleaning up the kitchen. "Yada," Kei said excitedly. "Alright, how about we head over to the Uchiha compound now?" "Hi. Let's go. Let's go," Kei said excitedly and pulled up his arms. "Piggyback." "Haha. Alright. Piggyback it is," Naruto said and turned around for Kei to climb on his back. Then the two headed out of the house in direction of the Uchiha district. While walking through the village, Naruto couldn't help but notice that everyone was just like usual. Well, it's to be expected. No one knows that there could be an attack of the strongest tailed beast any moment. But it sure is nerve-wracking, Naruto thought looking around. They arrived at the Uchiha compound at 8:30. Naruto walked up to the guard and greeted them. Since this was not the first time he had come here, the guards let him in. And then, Naruto, together with Kei, headed to the main house where Itachi and his family lived. Naruto knocked on the door and then waited. It only took a moment for Itachi to come and open the door. First surprise came over his face. But that soon turned into confusion. "Naruto? What are you doing here? Shouldn't you be off with your family celebrating or something?" Itachi asked and his glanced at the now squirming Kei on Naruto's back. Naruto put Kei down, who ran into the house right away and shouted, "Sasuke. Here to play." Naruto giggled slightly at the sight of his kid brother and then turned his gaze at Itachi. He turned serious right away and made sure to talk only loud enough for his friend to hear. "Yeah, well. Ka-chan is going to give birth sometime today. So both left in the early morning." Itachi's eyes widened at that statement. "That's early than expected, right? Last time I heard, she wasn't supposed to give birth for another 2 weeks. Is your mom okay?" Itachi asked just as quietly. "Yeah, I know. I was quite surprised too. But what can you do?" he said and shrugged. "Bawako Abe-san has gone with her and Tu-chan. So she'll be alright," he said, sounding more confident than he actually felt. "Well, and since your parent aren't here either, I thought I'll come over so that Kei and Sasuke-kun can play a bit." Well, that and I'd probably go crazy sitting alone with Kay all day. He said while glancing north. Somewhere that way were his parents. Maybe already trying to keep the fox at bay. Please let it be alright, he thought and furrowed his brows. Itachi saw this and knew right away what he was thinking. They'll be fine, I'm sure. I guess you took it with you then? Itachi asked. Naruto turned his head to Itachi again and gave a small smile. Yeah, of course. Like I'd actually forget it. It's right here. He said and put his hand into his pocket and took out the scroll from earlier. Itachi just nodded and then invited Naruto in. Naruto thanked him, put the scroll back into his pocket and entered the house. Oh, and by the way. Happy birthday, Naruto. Itachi said and patted Naruto's shoulder. Naruto answered with a foxy grin. With that, the two now 5-year-old boys spent the time watching their younger brothers playing with Sasuke's toys. Everything was very peaceful the whole day, and both Naruto and Itachi slowly started to relax. It wasn't until later in the afternoon that they felt it. A presence so great that both Kay and Sasuke started crying right away. A loud growl, echoing through the whole village. And killing intent that made both Naruto and Itachi shake in fear. They didn't need to go out of the house to see it. They didn't need to say a word. They just knew. The Kyuubi had gotten free. Chapter 2. Losses. It was 4 o'clock in the morning when Minato and Kushina looked through the doorframe into Naruto's bedroom. Naruto was sleeping peacefully, like Kay was. Kushina felt a hand on her shoulder and turned to her husband. Both nodded and then left the house. They walked down the street to the Hokage Tower. They were to meet with Bawako Sarutobi, as well as their ANBU guard. They didn't take long to reach the tower. The streets were very quiet since the villagers were still fast asleep. Bawako and the 5 ANBUs were already present. Bawako had long brown hair which she kept in a high ponytail, dark eyes, slightly visible creases at the corners of her eyes and her mouth. She wore a purple kimono-like dress, along with a white haori and sandals. The ANBUs wore the traditional uniform and their mask consisted of a cat, a horse, a wolf, a dog and a rabbit. The ANBUs all bowed deeply at the arrival of their Hokage and Bawako bowed her hair slightly as a greeting. Minato, Kushina, good morning. How are you feeling? She asked Kushina. Fine so far. Thank you, Bawako Oba-san, Kushina said, bowing her head in a greeting as well. Bawako mumbled something under her breath. Something about respect and elders. Bawako had tried for years to get Kushina to stop calling her Oba-san, but was failing miserably. And the Namikaze's oldest son was just as bad. Always calling her Oba-san, and she was the wife of the 3rd Hokage, Hiruzen Sarutobi, so not many people called her the way the Namikazes called her. Actually. No one but they did. Good morning. Thanks for coming so early in the morning. Minato said, smiling at Bawako's antics, and bowed his head to Bawako as well. Just then, an elder man and a beautiful woman, with a bust of considerable size, came out of the tower. Hiruzen, Tsunade, thanks for seeing us off, Minato said to the two new arrivals with a smile. Hiruzen Sarutobi, Sandaime Hokage, was tan-skinned and had brown spiky hair and a goatee. He had a single line running vertically under the corners of each eye. He was wearing a red full-length kimono that was tied using a white sash and a white haori. He had put his hands behind his back and was now smiling at Minato. Of course. Hiruzen answered with a smile. Tsunade Senju was fair-skinned, had long straight blonde hair tied in 2 loose pigtails, and had a purple diamond-shaped mark on her forehead. She wore a green haori over a grey kimono blouse, held by a dark obi, which are the same color as her pants. She also wore a blue crystal necklace. She put her hands on her hips and gave Minato a small smile. I wish you guys good luck, Tsunade said. Thanks. I'll leave things here to you then. Minato said to the two. Be careful and come back safely. Hiruzen said to Minato and then looked at Bawako. And you better come home safe as well, or I'll get angry. Bawako smiled at her husband in return. Don't worry. We'll soon have a new Namikaze brat making everyone go crazy around here. Just like their mother. Bawako stated while smirking at Kushina, who only laughed sheepishly. We'll be better head out now. Hiruzen, Tsunade, see you soon. Minato said and turned in direction of north. Jana. Kushina said and turned as well. Then Minato and Kushina took off. The 5 ANBUs following suit and Bawako looking after them. I better go too. I'll see you soon. Bawako said and took Hiruzen's hand. Gave it a squeeze and let go. She then went after Kushina and Minato. Why do I feel like something is going to happen? Hiruzen asked while looking at the retreating form of his wife. It will be alright, I'm sure, sensei. Tsunade answered. But she couldn't hide the worry in her voice like she would have wanted. Minato and his followers arrived at the small hut where Kushina had given birth the 2 prior times at around 6 o'clock. They had traveled at a slower pace than usual since Kushina was having a rather hard time. Usually, it would have taken them approximately 30 minutes to reach the hut. But with a highly pregnant woman on the group, it had taken them about twice the time. which was still a rather fast pace. "Alright Akami, Wolf, Usagi, Rabbit, the two of you will stay guard outside in a radius of 30 mile. Yuma, Horse, and Inu, Dog, you two watch the hut from up close. Nico, Cat, I want you to stay in the room with us in case Bawako needs a hand." Minato gave his commands. "Hi," was the mutual answer of the ANBUs. Akami and Usagi disappeared and Shunshin and Yuma and Inu took their position in front of the hut. Minato nodded and took Kushina's hand. She then led her inside, followed closely by Nico and Bawako. Minato led Kushina into the living room where Kushina sat down on a couch and leaned her head back. Walking around in the kitchen to make dinner was one thing. Running over an hour through the forest was another. She was exhausted and needed a break. Bawako sat down next to her and checked that everything was alright while Kat stood straight at the door. Ready for anything. Minato meanwhile walked into the room next to the living room. It was a rather big room. A big bed was in the middle of the room and there was a small crib in the corner of the room. There was also a table with all kinds of medical utensils on it across the room. "Let's hope we won't need them," Minato thought worriedly. "Okay. Time to get the room ready." Minato walked over to the table and took out different tags. He then took out a brush and ink and started to draw a different kind of seals. The seals he drew were for different kind of effects. Some were protective seals that would keep people from entering, others were chakra suppressors to keep the Kyuubi's chakra from being felt by sensors. And the last ones were to help keeping the Kyuubi in check. Once he was done he taped those seals all over the room on the walls. This should do. Minato then walked back into the living room and looked at Kushina. She was pale and was breathing heavily. "How is she?" he asked Bawako. "She's holding up. But she's not quite ready yet." Bawako answered and looked at Minato. "Tsunade really is amazing. To be able to tell that she's giving birth today so accurately. She really is the best medic nin there is," Bawako stated with pride. After all, she had taught Tsunade everything she knew and then Tsunade went and surpassed her. "Yeah, she sure is." Minato said and sat down as well. "Nico, you can sit down as well you know. It's going to be a long day." Minato said and motioned to the single couch that was in front of them. Nico seemed to think for a moment but then she nodded. "Hi. Thank you, Hokage-sama," she said and sat down. "Aya." Kushina shouted and grabbed onto the sheets of the bed. It was now around 1600 hours. About 1 hour ago, Bawako had said that it would be best to move to the bedroom since it wouldn't be long until Kushina was ready. So Minato had carried her into the bedroom and laid her onto the bed. The contractions had become in shorter intervals until this moment. "Kushina, I need you to push," Bawako said while keeping an eye open for the child. Nico stood beside Kushina and had a green glowing hand on her head, trying to minimize the pain. "God Minato. For doing this to me again. I'm going to make your remaining life hell." Kushina shouted and pushed. "I know honey, it'll be alright." Minato said and concentrated on the seal on Kushina's stomach. He was currently reinforcing the seal of the Kyuubi. "I can see the head Kushina." "Ah." Kushina shouted again. "One more push, Kushina." "Nico get here." Bawako shouted and Nico appeared at her side a second later with clamps and a scissor to cut the umbilical cord. Minato would have to take care of the seal so he wouldn't be able to cut the cord. "Alright, it's here." Bawako said with a smile on her face. That turned into a frown and then a look of worry. "Oh no." Bawako said. Nico had meanwhile cut the cord and was looking at Bawako. Just like Minato and Kushina as well. "What? What is with my child?" "Oba-chan." Kushina shouted with worry. "Bawako?" Minato asked now with equal worry. If he wasn't still holding the Kyuubi back, he would rush to her side without a though. "Nico? I need your help. Now." Bawako said and took the child to the table on the other side of the room. Her hands started to glow green and she put them over the heart of the child. The heart that was not beating. Nico had arrived next to her and started her own medical jutsu on the child. Both Bawako and Nico were so focused on the child and Minato and Kushina on both keeping the fox at bay and trying to find out what was wrong with their child that none noticed the new presence in the room. The new presence moved and in an instant he was next to Bawako and Nico and killed both by slicing their throat. Both fell to the ground. Not even knowing what had hit them. The presence, now identified as a man with a mask, turned around. "What?" Shit, Minato cursed. The masked man had taken the child in his arms and looked at Minato and Kushina. He then pointed a kunai at the child's throat. "Yondaime Hokage, Minato Namikaze and his wife Kushina Namikaze, formerly Uzumaki. It is a pleasure to meet you. I don't know who you are, but you better not hurt my child," Minato said. He was still keeping the seal intact, which is why he couldn't move to the man and take his child back. "Of course, that is, if you're willing to fulfill my wishes," the masked man said. "What is it that you want?" This time it was Kushina that asked. Her breath was swallow and she was barely conscious. That, dear Kushina, is fairly simple. The man stated. I want you. More precisely. I want the Kyuubi inside of you. Don't be stupid. Let the child go. Minato said. He was getting angry. But he still couldn't move. Yet somehow, even though he had no actual evidence, he knew that something was wrong with their child. It hadn't cried once, and as much as he wanted to believe that it was just a real heavy sleeper, the part of him that was still thinking logically told him there was nothing he could do for his child. And certainly not without the presence of a medic nin. So you don't want to give me the Kyuubi willingly? Well, I wasn't really expecting it either way, but it's a shame. Such a young life. The man said, looking down at the little baby. His gaze then turned to Kushina. Their eyes met and suddenly there was an eruption of evil chakra from Kushina's body. Originating from the seal that Minato was now trying to keep working with all his might. I'm just going to take it by force then. The man stated. The kunai then went down into the child's throat. Ooh. Kushina cried out in pure agony over seeing her child being killed. She, like Minato, had realized that something had been wrong but still believed that their child could have been saved. This possibility had now been crushed by the kunai stuck into their baby's throat. The enormous emotional breakdown of Kushina as well as the influence of the masked man, Minato was no longer able to hold the seal in place and the Kyuubi started to materialize. Minato took Kushina into his arms and used the Hiraishin no Jutsu, Flying Thunder God technique, to bring her into a safe place. Kushina was still crying. My baby. Oh God. Why? I'll be right back. Minato said and teleported back into what was left of the hut. The Kyuubi was still materializing itself and the masked man looked at it while still holding the dead baby in his arm. He was then attacked by Minato. Minato tried to hit the man in the face, but his punch passed right though and he appeared behind him. Getting over his shock quickly, he spun around and tried to hit him with his leg. Put it past the man again. The masked man, who apparently was sick of carrying a dead baby around, threw it at Minato. Catch. He said and then disappeared to look at the finalization of the Kyuubi's transformation. Minato's eyes widened and he sprung towards the baby and caught it. It was now laying naked in his arms. A baby girl. With blonde hair and 2 whiskers on her cheek. She's so beautiful. I'm sorry I couldn't protect you. Minato thought and let a tear roll down his cheek. He teleported back to the still crying Kushina and put the girl in her mother's arm for the first and also the last time. If anything, Kushina's crying became even stronger. She held her child close to her chest with no intention of ever letting go. Minato looked back to where the hut had been. The Kyuubi had finished his materialization and was now moving at an incredible speed towards Konoha. And as the Hokage, he couldn't let that happen. Kushina. I need to go. The Kyuubi is on its way to the village. Stay here. I'll be back soon. Minato said and kissed Kushina on the forehead. He then disappeared in a yellow flash. Meanwhile, the Kyuubi had reached the village. There were cries of terror and fear. Civilians were running into the inside of the village while the shinobi tried their best to provide a safe evacuation to the shelters. But it was no use. Nothing the shinobi did had an effect on the Kyuubi. Kunai were hit away with a flick of the tail and jutsu were simply not doing any damage. People died one after the other. They were crashed by the Kyuubi or were burnt by the fire that had started the moment the Kyuubi had entered the village. The situation seemed desperate. The Kyuubi had already reached the middle of the village and was now preparing to attack. The Kyuubi then opened his mouth and gathered what seemed like chakra in front of his muzzle. Ready to fire a Bijuu bomb. Uchius no Jutsu, summoning jutsu. Was heard and suddenly, a gigantic toad appeared on top of the Kyuubi. And on top of the toad stood Minato. All kind of shouts were heard from the people in the village. It's Yondaime-sama. We're saved. Hokage-sama. Minato went through a set of hand seals and slammed his hand on the toad's head. There was a huge poof of smoke and Minato, the toad and the Kyuubi had disappeared from view only to appear 40 miles outside of the village. Hiruzen, who had arrived at the scene the moment Minato teleported away, looked around. It hasn't even been 5 minutes since it entered the village. And there is already so much destruction. So many death Hiruzen thought and started to give orders for evacuation of the civilian and the recovery of the injured and dead. Minato arrived in the middle of the forest on top of the toad which he sent back to his home. Minato had thus jumped off the beast and the Kyuubi stood now right in front of him. And so, for the first time, he took a closer look at the Kyuubi, or more precisely, his eyes. Minato's eyes widened at what he saw. The Sharingan. So the masked man is in Uchiha. He must be controlling the Kyuubi then. I can't have you prevent the Kyuubi from destroying the village, Minato. Said the masked man who had appeared behind Minato. The Uchiha threw a punch at Minato, who dodged it by crouching down. Minato then tried to sweep the Uchiha's legs away by turning around with his leg outstretched, but the masked man just jumped over it. Minato proceeded to slash at him with his kunai, but just like the last time, he simply passed through the man. Shit. What the hell is this jutsu, Minato thought. Like I said. Can't have you get in my way. The man said, and he started and grabbed Minato's hand that was holding the kunai. He then started to distort together with Minato. Minato noticed this and used the Hiraishin to get away again. He looked at the Kyuubi again, who had started to run towards the village again. Damn. I can't take care of the Kyuubi and this guy at the same time, neither do I have any seals farther away. And where the heck am I supposed to seal the Kyuubi in the first place? Minato slowly started to panic. The strongest Biju was currently attacking his village, and he was stuck with this Uchiha guy that had a grudge against Konoha. Kushina was too weak mentally and physically at the moment to seal the Kyuubi into herself again, and there was no one who would willingly accept to have the Kyuubi sealed into themselves. And no one that could have it sealed into them without dying from the strain either. His thoughts were interrupted by the masked man who once again attacked, a kunai in his hand. Okay. First things first. I need to figure out this jutsu he can somehow dematerialize. But he did grab me before. So he does have a physical form, alright. Let's try this, Minato thought, and prepared a Rasengan in his right hand. He then threw a kunai and ran right after it. He stretched the swirling chakra ball out and saw the kunai pass through the man. But he had expected that. The moment the kunai arrived behind the man's head, Minato used a Hiraishin to teleport above the man and slammed his Rasengan into his back. The Rasengan hit and the Uchiha crashed into the ground. The man managed to get up and jump away. He was holding his right arm and was breathing heavily. So you figured it out. My technique. The man stated. But even if you did. It doesn't change the fact that the Kyuubi will destroy. The man stopped mid-sentence and looked in the direction of the village. The Kyuubi had stopped in his tracks. And then, the Kyuubi disappeared in a poof of smoke. Not only the Kyuubi itself, but its whole presence simply disappeared. But how, the Uchiha murmured to himself. Then he turned to Minato again. What did you do? Nothing should have been able to stop it. The masked man shouted angrily. Minato on his part was at a loss of words as well. Hiruzen must have found a way to stop it. Good. Now I can concentrate on this guy. The moment Minato had finished his thought, the masked man started to distort. This is not over. We will see each other again. Minato Namikaze. The man said and disappeared. Hiruzen was still in the middle of the village overlooking the evacuation. ANBUs were searching and rescuing possible survivors. The Uchiha police force that had arrived moments ago had taken charge of bringing people to the shelters. He could see Fugaku Uchiha, head of the clan, leading a group of children, probably from the orphanage that was around the corner, away. And Tsunade had taken control of the medics. She was personally not involved in the process of healing, after all she still had hemophobia, but her inputs on how to heal someone were still a huge help. Hiruzen's gaze then went to the Kyuubi that was still miles away. Shit. He thought as he saw that the Kyuubi was again on the move. All of you, hurry it up. Team Bat, you come with me. Hiruzen shouted and ran in the direction the Kyuubi was coming from. The ANBU team Hiruzen had ordered to come with him were following closely behind. They reached the village gate a short time before the Kyuubi did. Hiruzen was about to go through a set of hand seals when the Kyuubi suddenly stopped in his tracks. The Kyuubi, who moments before seemed like a bloodthirsty, ruthless beast, now stood in front of the Sandaime Hokage and looked calm. The breathing of the fox became slower and its eyes started fluttering shut. Like it was falling asleep. And then. Poof. It was gone. No residual scent, no chakra, nothing. Absolutely no trace of the Kyuubi no Kitsune. Where the heck did it go? It can't just disappear like that, can it? Hiruzen thought while looking around. Trying to sense something. Anything. Must be Minato's doing, he thought, and signaled the ANBUs to follow him into the forest where Minato had teleported previously. Bawako were his thoughts while he accelerated his pace. Minato meanwhile had returned to Kushina's side. Her sobs had turned quieter, but she still refused to let go of their deceased daughter. Minato picked her up and teleported back to the hut. On the way to Kushina, Minato had looked for his ANBU guards. He was pretty sure the masked man had killed them, but he still wanted to make sure. He had been right. He had found both Akami and Usagi 20 miles from the hut with sliced throats. Now that they had arrived at the hut, Minato started looking for his two last guards. Yuma and Inu. He found them underneath the rubble of the hut. Like he had done with Akami and Usagi, he sealed both Yuma and Inu into scrolls as well. He was going to give them a proper burial once they got home. He kept looking and soon also found Nico and Bawako. Their death was really bitter to Minato. Both had tried their best to save his daughter, which he was really thankful for. He pulled them out of the scree and laid Bawako to the side while he sealed Nico away. He felt Hiruzen coming. He'll want to see her, Minato thought, and walked over to his wife. He didn't say anything. He was just as crushed as she was. All he did was take her in his arms and slowly rocked her back and forth. Tears were now also streaming down from his face onto Kushina's head. Feeling her husband crying seemed to make a new wave of emotion surge from Kushina as her sobbing once again turned stronger and she moved her right arm to now hold onto Minato's back. Their daughter in between them. This was the sight Hiruzen Sarutobi and 5 ANBUs came across. Minato Hiruzen started. Minato looked up. His tear-stained face broke Hiruzen's heart. And what he said next broke it even more. Hiruzen. I'm sorry. I couldn't protect her. Please forgive me. Minato said, his face filled with guilt and grief. He turned his gaze to Bawako, who was lying a few feet away from the pair. Hiruzen walked over to his wife and took her into his arms. A few tears rolling down his face as well. It's not your fault, Minato. None of this is. So don't blame yourself. Hiruzen said and picked Bawako up. We need to head back, Minato. There was a lot of damage in the village. Hiruzen stated and turned to Minato. Minato nodded and picked Kushina up as well. That's when Hiruzen, as well as the 5 ANBUs first laid eyes on the little baby in Kushina's arms. I'm sorry, Minato, Kushina Hiruzen said sadly. Minato just nodded in thanks. They then took off in direction of the village. After some time, Hiruzen asked the question that had been going through his mind for a moment. But tell me, Minato, how did you make the Kyuubi disappear? Hiruzen asked. This made Minato have a look of surprise and then of confusion come over his face. Me? I thought you did it. I couldn't. I was busy. Minato answered, making sure he didn't let the fact slip that there was someone controlling the Biju. He would have to speak with Hiruzen about that when they were alone. But if it wasn't you, and me neither. Who did it? Hiruzen asked the question that was going through the mind of all people present aloud. Chapter 3. Sacrifice. Naruto and Itachi looked at each other, the horror present on both of their faces. Kei and Sasuke both came running towards the two older boys. Nai-chan. Sasuke cried out and clung to Itachi's leg. I'm scared. Kei cried out as well and followed Sasuke's lead by clinging onto Naruto's leg. We need to get them to the shelters. Naruto stated and picked up Kei, so he was now resting on his hip. Itachi followed suit and picked up Sasuke as well. Then both Itachi and Naruto ran outside. What awaited them outside was hell. People were yelling, crying and running around. A fire consumed everything in its way. The heat of the fire reaching even the Uchiha compound. Even though it was situated almost on the other side of the village. They could see the Kyuubi currently making its way towards the center of the village. Two-chan, Ka-chan, please be alright. Naruto thought worriedly. Itachi then started to run towards the shelters. Naruto followed right behind. Kei was holding tightly onto his older brother, still crying. Suddenly there was a loud crash and Naruto and Itachi stopped in their tracks to look at where the sound came from. In the center of the village, right on top of the Kyuubi's head, now sat a gigantic red toad. And on top of the toad stood a figure. Although they were so far away from the scene, Naruto let go of a sigh of relief when he recognized his father. Naruto. Itachi shouted and Naruto turned around to look at his friend. We need to hurry up. We need to get Sasuke and Kei to the shelters. Itachi said seriously. Right. Naruto said. Looking a last time towards the Kyuubi, just in time to see it disappear in a poof of smoke. Nice work Two-chan. Naruto though and then once again ran after Itachi. The two of them ran out of the compound and into the streets of Konoha. Naruto and Itachi ran past a lot of shinobis. Most of them were running towards the center, ready to fight the Kyuubi if it would return, but a lot of the shinobis were also trying to lead the civilian to the shelters. They passed a lot of Uchiha on the way, all keeping the evacuation as organized as possible. The Uchiha compound was thankfully really close to the shelters that were situated inside of the Hokage rock. Naruto then stopped in his tracks as he looked towards north. There was the Kyuubi and once again it was running towards the village. Itachi had noticed that Naruto had stopped and stopped as well. He turned to his friend and followed his gaze. You're going to do it aren't you Itachi asked with a frown. Naruto turned his gaze towards Itachi, who was still looking at the Kyuubi's fast approaching figure. Itachi turned his gaze towards Naruto again, since he had yet to answer. There was a look of determination in his eyes. Gu-chan must have a reason why he isn't holding the Kyuubi back. Maybe he was attacked anyway. He won't be able to be here in time. And the Kyuubi will destroy everything the next time he arrives here. So yes. I'm going to do it. Naruto said, with fire in his eyes as he continued to look at Itachi. Itachi nodded. He knew that Naruto's mind was set. It had been since he had told Itachi about his plan. And Itachi had supported him all the way. Naruto was his best friend and he knew what he was capable of. Probably the only person who really knew what he was capable of. The people in his clan had always said that Itachi was a prodigy. But Itachi knew that Naruto was just as much a prodigy than him. Maybe no, probably an even greater. That's why Itachi wasn't nervous. Alright. But I won't let you go on your own. Itachi said and looked at the two kids for a second. Naruto furrowed his brows. They couldn't take Kei and Sasuke with them, and if they entered the shelter, they wouldn't be let out again until the all clear sounded. Then, someone behind Itachi caught his attention. "Ah. Hitomi-san." Naruto called out. He run past Itachi and walked towards the woman he had called out to. Itachi followed him. "Naruto-kun." The woman said and took a look at the small group. She then smiled. "Thank God you are all alright," she said. She had shoulder-length dark blue hair and wide eyes, with no visible pupils. The proof that she was a member of the Hyuga clan. She wore a white kimono with a blue obi and held small girl in her arms. Her daughter Hinata, who despite all the commotion around her, slept peacefully in her mother's arm. Next to the woman stood two men. Both had the same eyes as Hitomi, but wore the traditional shinobi uniform of Konoha. "Hitomi-san, Itachi and I forgot something at the compound. It's a seal my father made for reinforcing of walls. We really need to get back to get it, but we can't take Kei and Sasuke-kun with us again. That would be too dangerous," Naruto stated in a hushed tone. "So, could we leave the two with you until we get back? Please. It won't take long, I promise," Naruto asked in a pleading voice. "But, Naruto-kun, that's really dangerous. Going back now? Is it really necessary for you to have that seal?" Hitomi asked in worried tone. "Yeah, it's really important. Please Hitomi-san. I promise we'll be fine," Naruto said again. Hitomi seemed to think for a moment and looked at both Naruto and Itachi with a worried frown, but then she nodded. "Alright, Naruto-kun, Itachi-kun. But please be careful. And hurry up," Hitomi said and gave her guard the sign to take the two now sleeping toddlers from Itachi and Naruto. Apparently they had cried themselves to sleep. "Thank you," he said and was already turning around and started to run. "Thank you," Itachi said with a bow and ran after Naruto. Naruto suddenly turned away from the village gate, the direction they had been heading towards. Itachi frowned. "Aren't we supposed to get to the north gate?" He voiced his thoughts. Naruto tuned his head slightly towards Itachi. "Not quite. We can't just appear at the gate. I'm sure Jiji is already there or certainly on his way," Naruto answered. "We just need to be close enough," Naruto said, and then they entered the forest. Naruto stopped and looked around. "I need a high tree," Naruto said and kept looking. "How high?" Itachi asked, looking around now as well. "High enough to see the gate," Naruto answered, and then his stare stopped on a certain tree about 500 yards away. "Something like that," Naruto said, smirking, and rushed towards it. He then looked up the tree and nodded. "Alright. I can do this," he said like a mantra. "Are you sure you're going to do this? If you really succeed, which I'm sure you will, you're going to change your life completely. You don't know how much it's going to change you either," Itachi said seriously and looked at Naruto. Naruto then smiled. "I know. Or rather, you're right. I don't know how it's going to change me and my life, but right now, it needs to be done. I'm ready to face the consequences too," Naruto said with determination. "Alright. Let's start this then." "Yep. Let's do this. I might need your chakra though," Naruto said and started running up the tree. Once again followed by Itachi. "Sure," was his answer. The two of them were now looking over the village. The Kyuubi would only need another minute or so to reach the gate. They had to hurry. Naruto sat down on a branch and took out the scroll he had in his pocket. He then took a deep breath and opened it. On the scroll was a very complicated seal. Naruto had needed 3 months to draw it down correctly, but he had managed to do it in the end. Naruto looked at Itachi one last time. He just nodded and put his hand on his shoulder. Slowly Naruto felt Itachi's chakra entering his own system. Naruto then bit his thumb and smeared it on the seal. He started to go through a series of hand seals as fast as possible, but still making sure he didn't mess up. He ended with a ram seal and then spread his right arm, palm facing the Kyuubi. He closed his eyes and then proceeded to channel chakra into the seal that now lay in his lap until he felt a tug. And then a chakra thread shot out of Naruto's palm and connected with the Kyuubi just in the moment where the Kyuubi reached the gate. Naruto had a look of concentration on his face and he noticed his chakra reserves depleting fast, even with Itachi's constant supply. He then closed his right hand around the thread and pulled. Itachi looked on with fascination as the Kyuubi suddenly seemed to fall asleep, and as soon as Naruto had started to pull on the thread, Itachi saw how the thread that was originally made of blue chakra slowly turned red and was absorbed into Naruto. And then, poof, the Kyuubi was gone. As soon as the Kyuubi was gone, he could feel Naruto go from his grasp. He turned his gaze to Naruto just in time to see that he was clutching his chest with a painful expression on his face and slowly started to tilt to the side. Itachi was not fast enough though, and Naruto fell from the tree. Itachi sprung after him and was barely able to cushion his fall. Itachi had managed to grab him and change the direction of the fall by pushing away from the tree. Both Itachi and Naruto now laid at the base of the tree. Naruto was still in deep pain. His eyes were shut closely and he was sweating a lot. "Naruto, what is it?" Itachi asked while slowly getting up and walking towards him. "It feels as if my chest is being ripped apart. It hurts like hell." Naruto answered, stopping sometimes to take a breath. "Well, you did just seal the strongest tailed beast into yourself. I mean, there had to be a reason why your father never told anyone about the technique. I guess because of the toll it takes on one's body, only Uzumaki's can even attempt to perform it. Are you holding up?" Itachi stated and then asked looking worriedly at Naruto. "Yeah, it's getting better. But for a moment, I really thought I was done for." Naruto said and started to sit up. Itachi helped Naruto stand up as he fell again the moment he tried to get up. He put Naruto's arm around his shoulder and started to walk. "We need to head back to the shelters or people will get suspicious. We'll just tell them you were hit by a flying piece of rock or something." Itachi said and kept walking in the direction of the shelters. "By the way, who was the Hyuga you left the boys with?" Itachi asked looking down to the blonde. "You don't know her? She's a good friend of your mom though," he said still stopping mid-sentence. "And mine too by the way. They were in the same graduating class," Naruto said. Slowly, his breathing became more even, he was now trying to walk a bit more on his own. "Hitomi Hyuga, she's the wife of Hiashi-sama, the head of the Hyuga clan. Her daughter Hinata is the same age as Kei and Sasuke-kun, so mom used to take me to their get-together," Naruto added. Was the Uchiha's answer. "Sensei." Minato. Tsunade shouted and ran towards the two arriving shinobis. She stopped when she saw that both were carrying their wives. Kushina was by now silently sobbing and was looking at the corpse in her arms, and Bawako was not moving at all. Tsunade, not being the best medic that the world had ever seen, knew right away that there was nothing to be done, except. "I'm so sorry," she said sadly. Both Hiruzen and Minato nodded in thanks. "How's the situation?" Minato asked trying to change the subject. He couldn't think about their daughter or Bawako now. There was too much to take care of at the moment. Hiruzen seemed to think the same as he looked expectantly at Tsunade as well. "Well, I just got notice that most civilian were moved to the shelters, but half the village was destroyed and there is a high number of causalities as well as a lot of injuries," Tsunade answered. Making sure not to look at the in-blood-covered baby in Kushina's arm or at Bawako. She was already at her limits, seeing all the injured people. She had gotten better in the last 5 years since she came back to the village, but she still couldn't look at the blood without feeling her body freeze. The only reason she hadn't run away yet was probably because she knew that this would cause even more death. So even if she didn't participate in the treatment of the injured, her being there seemed to have a calming effect on the rest of the medic nins. "I see, well at least, the attack is over," Minato said with a sigh. "He lost many people today." "Komori, bat." Minato called the bat mask ANBU. "Hi, Hokage-sama." The ANBU with a bat mask asked while kneeling. "Oh, ring the all clear. We need as many hands as we can get. Everyone who is willing is to help with the search and rescue of the injured. And then I would like for you to find my sons. Bring them to my house," Minato stated. "Hi." Bat answered and left in a shunshin. "Minato." A familiar voice shouted out to Minato. Itachi and Naruto had just arrived at the shelter. Naruto was now able to walk on his own again but still got Itachi's worried glances every few seconds. As if he was expecting Naruto to fall over any moment. After all, Naruto was still sweating a lot. "I'm fine. Really?" Dadabeo, Naruto said and even gave Itachi a goofy grin. Itachi just frowned, which resulted in Naruto sighing. "You're really a worrywart, Itachi," Naruto said. "Well, sorry for worrying about my friend who just went through something that would kill anyone else," Itachi stated, annoyed at his friend's antics. "Naruto-kun, Itachi-kun." They heard a woman shout. They turned to look at her. It was Hitomi. "Thank God you're back. You took a lot longer than you should have," Hitomi said and looked both boys over. "A menace, Hitomi-san. You see, Naruto here was hit by a flying piece of rock and had some troubles walking afterwards. So it took us a bit longer to get back," Itachi said while bowing to Hitomi. "What? Naruto-kun, are you okay?" Hitomi asked, turning her gaze from Itachi to Naruto. "Hi, I'm sorry. I was careless," Naruto said, bowing to her as well. "But I'm fine now," he added and smiled at Hitomi. "Ah, and the Kyuubi has disappeared. I thought you might want to know," Itachi stated. Suddenly there was no more noise in the room and everybody stared at the two of them. Is that true? It's gone?" asked a man from inside the crowd. "It's true. You can't feel it because of the seals inside here, but it's gone," Naruto stated. "But I'd still wait for the all clear to sound," Naruto added, and just in that moment there was a loud ringing. The all clear. See. "There it is," Naruto said smiling. That's when cheering erupted from all corners. Naruto and Itachi were meanwhile led to their younger brothers, who were curled up in a blanket together with Hinata, which made both Itachi and Naruto smile. "Naruto-sama?" asked a voice from behind Naruto. Naruto turned around and looked straight into the bat-masked ANBU. "Hokage-sama has asked me to bring you and your brother to your house," the ANBU said. Normally Naruto would have told the ANBU to not address him with Sama like he had done with Panda. But Naruto was only thinking about what Komori had just told him. Naruto breathed a sigh of relief. His father was okay. He turned to look at Itachi. "Go. I'll head back to the compound too," he said to the blonde. "Take it easy, okay?" he added quietly so that only Naruto heard. The blonde nodded in response and smiled. He then picked up a still sleeping K and bowed one last time to Hitomi. "Thank you very much for watching him for me, Hitomi-san," he said and then added in a sheepish voice. "And well, could you maybe not tell my parents about this? They'll surely get angry at me if they find out." Hitomi had to laugh at that. "Alright, Naruto-kun. I promise I won't tell a soul, but you owe me one," she said with a wink and a smile. Naruto grinned at that. "Sure thing, Dadabayo." Naruto then walked over to the bat. "Alright, Komori-san, I'm ready," Naruto said. That then proceeded in taking Naruto's outstretched hand and shunshined out of the shelter. They soon arrived in front of the house. Komori let go of his hand and took a step back. "Your parents should be here soon," Komori said and turned away. "Poor kid. Can't really tell him his sibling is dead." "Thank you, Komori-san," Naruto said and waved at the ANBU. The ANBU then disappeared in a shunshin and Naruto went into the house. The house of the Namikaze was rather close to both the shelter and the Hokage tower, so it wasn't destroyed during the attack. Naruto went past the living room and straight into K's nursery, where he gently put K in his crib. Next he ran into the bathroom that was on the same floor. He put his head over the toilet and started to throw up. "Fine my ass, I feel like shit," Naruto thought and stared at his shaking hands. He had been able to pretend that he was fine in front of Itachi, Hitomi and Komori. But the truth was that he felt like his body was on fire. The pain was almost unbearable, but at the same time, he was slowly getting used to it, which was the main reason he was even able to walk. He then grabbed his shirt and pulled it up. There it was. On his stomach. A big and very complicated seal. And it was moving. The chances of the Kyuubi getting out were very slim. As long as Naruto didn't die, the Kyuubi would stay sealed. But the seal had nevertheless not fully set on Naruto yet. Hence why it was still moving. And why Naruto still felt like he was going to collapse any second. He took a deep, shaky breath and went downstairs. He then sat down on the sofa in the living room and waited. Waited for his family to arrive. "Fugaku. Good to see you're alright," Minato said and turned to his friend who was running up to him. "Same to you," Fugaku said and looked at Kushina. "And the baby." He frowned. "I'm sorry." Minato shook his head. "It wasn't the time. We need to get the injured to the hospital and retrieve the dead," Minato said. "And I need to get Kushina home," he said and looked at his wife. Fugaku nodded. "Do that," he said and then the all clear sounded. "Good. We'll get some help then," Fugaku added looking in the direction of the shelters. "We'll gather the deceased on training ground 22," he said loud enough for all shinobi around him to hear him. The order slowly traveled to the shinobi farther away as well. "It's right next to the graveyard and it's the biggest we have as well," Minato said, this time without raising his voice. Fugaku nodded. "We can take care of things for a while. Go." "He's right, Minato, sensei, you too. We can look at things for a while," Tsunade said to the two. "Thank you, but I'll stay. I'll bring Bawako to the training ground first though. Now is not the time for grieving," Hiruzen said while looking at his deceased wife before turning to Minato. "Hiruzen's right. I'm the Hokage. I can't grieve yet. I'll bring Kushina home," and Minato stopped. He didn't have a name for the girl. They had chosen against finding out the gender and thus hadn't come up with a name. They had a few choices but they had never really decided. "Bakemi." Minato looked down at Kushina. It was the first time she had said something since the hut. Kushina looked up. "Her name is Akemi." Minato nodded. "Ah. Akemi. We need to bring her to the others, Kushina. You understand, right?" Kushina nodded but tears went down her face again. Minato held her close again and looked at Fugaku and Tsunade. "I'll be back soon," he said and started to run over the roofs that were still standing. He could go faster, but that would only shorten the time they still had with their child. Hiruzen apparently thought the same as he was running next to Minato at the same pace. Nevertheless, they arrived at the training ground faster than they had wanted. Although the order to bring the deceased to training ground 22 was only just given, there already were a great number of people on the field. Either putting down the bodies in the row or crying over their family member, friend or lover. Minato and Hiruzen looked at each other and nodded. They went to the end of the row of bodies, where a young girl, probably no older than 12, was just being laid down. The shinobi that put her down looked up at the Hokage and his predecessor. He saw that both were carrying a core. The shinobi bowed to both and started to leave. Hiruzen and Minato looked at the corpse of the young girl. So young, was the thought that went through both their minds. Hiruzen then proceeded to put Bawako down next to the girl, and Minato put Kushina to her feet. Reluctantly, Kushina let Minato take the girl from her arms. She started to sob again when Minato put the girl down next to Bawako. But not before wrapping his cloak around her. He looked a last time at his daughter, Akemi, before turning back to Kushina. He put an arm around her and then looked at Hiruzen. "I'll see you again in a bit. There are a few things we need to discuss," Minato said before, this time, disappearing in a yellow flash. Naruto looked up when he heard his father arriving in the living room. His first reaction was to smile, as he saw both his father and his mother alive. But the moment he actually looked at them, his smile faded from his face, being replaced by a look of confusion. He also felt like something was missing. He couldn't tell what it was right away. His father and mother were there, his father and his mother without his sibling. His mother was sobbing badly into Minato's chest, and Minato looked devastated. "No. Please no." Naruto thought and shot up from the sofa, ignoring the pain that shot through his body when moving, and ran towards the two of them. "Gu-chan, Ka-chan," Naruto said in desperate voice. Minato looked down at Naruto and gave a sigh of relief at seeing his son alright. Kushina on the other hand looked down at Naruto and started sobbing harder again. Minato noticed this. An age she'll never have reached. Minato thought sadly. Meiba thought of an idea to help Kushina. "Naruto. Where is Kei?" Minato asked in a monotone voice. Naruto was taken aback by his voice, but answered nonetheless. "He's upstairs. He fell asleep some time ago." Minato nodded and led Kushina upstairs. "Tu-chan." Naruto grabbed Minato's arm. "The little one?" Naruto asked in a light, yet pleading voice. Minato shook his head and moved again, leaving Naruto behind. Naruto just stood there. Tears slowly running down his cheeks. He then walked after Minato and his mother. Minato brought Kushina into Kei's nursery and made her sit down on the armchair. He then went to the crib and took Kei on his arm. He walked to Kushina again and put Kei in her arms. Kushina took Kei in her arms right away and held him close. He isn't Akemi, but he is closer to a newborn than Naruto. She'll need time. We all will, Minato thought sadly and saw Naruto walk up to Kushina. Kushina started crying harder again once she saw Naruto. "Naruto. Come with me," Minato said and walked out of the nursery. "Gu-chan," Naruto said sadly and looked at Minato. Minato took Naruto in his arm. "I'm sorry, Naruto. But Kushina, your Ka-chan needs some time right now. She just had to let go of her child. And right now, you remind her of Akemi. Both in looks and the fact that you're already older and she's thinking of how Akemi will never reach the place you are now." Naruto figured that Akemi was the name his parents must have given the little one. So she was a girl. Then Naruto frowned. Something his dad said didn't add up. But Kei isn't a baby either. He is already 2 years old, so why is Ka-chan alright with him being close? Naruto asked sadly. He really wanted to go into the nursery and hug his mother. But he had realized himself that she probably wouldn't calm down with him around. "You're right," Minato said and held his oldest son's shoulder. "But Kei is still a baby. He is also closer to Akemi's age, there's that, and Kushina has spent most of her time with Kei since he was born. I'm not asking of you to understand, but..." "No. I understand, Tu-chan," Naruto said and forced himself to smile. "If it will help Ka-chan. I'll give her time." Naruto thought, while still feeling sad over the fact that right now, he would have to stay away from his mother. Not completely, but still, not like before. Naruto then realized something else. "Tu-chan. How are you doing?" He had lost his daughter as well after all. Yet here he was taking care of his wife and trying to cheer Naruto up. Minato was taken aback by the question, but he gave Naruto a small smile. "I'll need some time as well," was his answer. He then ruffled Naruto's hair and stood up. "I need to get back now. There are a lot of things I have to take care of," Minato said and then walked into his bedroom. He came out a second later wearing a new coat. "Naruto, you were with Itachi-kun and Sasuke-kun during the day, right?" Minato asked. "Hi. They're both fine as well. They should be back in the compound by now," Naruto answered, already knowing why he asked. Fugaku would probably like to know his sons were alright. "Good. Thank you," Minato said and turned to leave. "And Naruto, good job watching your brother today," Minato said over his shoulders and disappeared in a flash. Naruto stared at the place his father had stood for another few seconds and then walked over to the nursery but stayed at the doorframe. Kushina was still holding Kei closely to her chest, rocking back and forth. Naruto stared at his mother for a bit longer and then moved to his room. He closed the door and then activated the seals that he had put on the wall of his room about a year ago. Silencing seals. Now, no matter what, Kushina wouldn't hear him. Naruto then slowly walked over to his bed and lay down. He looked at the ceiling. He put his right arm over his eyes and then, he started to cry. He cried because of the pain that was still rushing through his body, because his father had to leave again, even though he really needed him to be here right now, and he cried because his mother would want to stay away from him for some time. But most of all, he cried because he had lost his sibling. His younger sister that he had never met and would never meet. Akemi. Killed by the Kyuubi no Kitsune. The beast that had destroyed half the village and had killed most likely hundreds of people in the short time he was in the village. The beast that was now sealed inside of him. Chapter 4. Blame. Naruto woke up with a shout. Again. He had not slept a night through since the day the Kyuubi attacked, and it had been 4 days since then. 4 days. So, today was the funeral of all the deceased people from the attack. Naruto got up. He was covered in sweat, like he had been the past mornings as well. He looked at the watch on the side of his bed. Even though he already knew that it wasn't even 5 in the morning yet. He went to the bathroom and took a quick shower. The cold water was running over his face, and Naruto thought back to the events of the past days. In those 4 days, Kushina had spent most of her time in the nursery. Naruto had made sure to stay away, but with having a little interaction with her nevertheless. He always brought her the food or a coffee every now and then. Her reaction to him wasn't as bad as the evening they had come back. Her look still turned sad whenever she looked at him. And although she had talked to him and thanked him whenever he brought her something, she had not touched him since then. No hug, no kiss on the forehead. Nothing. Mikoto and Hitomi had come over as well. Mikoto, who had been on a mission during the attack, had come over the second day after she had heard of Akemi from Fugaku. It did Kushina good to have her friends around. She had even smiled a bit. Kei meanwhile was doing well. He did notice that their mother was sad, but he didn't really understand the reasons. He was still just 2 years old. Hitomi and Mikoto had also brought their toddlers with them so that they could all play together. Itachi had spent the days with his father. He had wanted for Itachi to help out at the police station. Of course, he wasn't supposed to do anything too difficult. Well, nothing physically difficult. Fugaku had placed Itachi in the office where he was supposed to help the villager find out what had happened to their family member. That at least was what Mikoto had told him. He hadn't actually seen Itachi since the time in the shelter. Minato had spent the last 4 days almost constantly in his office, so Naruto had barely seen him since then. Only sometimes in the morning when Minato was leaving and Naruto had just gotten up. But they hadn't really talked. As for Naruto, he had trained. He couldn't spend all the time in the house and he wasn't allowed to help in the village either. He would only get in the way, according to his father. And when he had asked Fugaku if he could help with something like Itachi was doing, he was told that he would do better to just spend time with his family, something that he couldn't do at the moment. So he did the only thing that would somehow take his mind of the things that had happened. Training. Thankfully, the pain he was going through because of the seal was now gone. The seal had set well on Naruto's stomach the day after the attack and so it was not bothering him. During those 4 days, Naruto noticed a few changes to his body that came with the sealing of the Kyuubi. For one, his chakra reserve had increased dramatically. Probably the reason he felt like he was on fire after the sealing. The Kyuubi's chakra had probably opened his chakra coils more and the fox's chakra had leaked into his own system. The fact that he had a lot more chakra messed up his chakra control pretty badly, so he had been working mainly on that in those days, as well as kunai throwing. Which led to the last discovery. Naruto, due to being careless, had cut himself with a kunai. It hadn't been a deep wound, but a wound nonetheless. He was just about to leave to find Shizune, Tsunade's apprentice and thus a medic nin, so that she could heal it when he noticed a tingle on the wound. When he looked at it again, it was gone. So he now had a fast healing ability. Something that would always come in handy. Naruto turned off the water of the shower and dried himself. He then went back into his room and put on his training gear. He then went out of the house into the clearing he and Itachi usually trained in. The clearing he had spent the past 4 days in. Naruto started with his usual warm-up and then started his exercises on chakra control again. He had managed to run up a tree again, something he wasn't able to do on the first day. And he had an approximate factor on how much his chakra reserve had increased. His reserves had approximately increased by a tenfold. So, if his feeling on that was correct, he'd have to use about 10 times less chakra to do the water walking exercise as well. So Naruto went onto the lake and tried to walk on it. He was swaying at first, since the amount he used wasn't quite right after all, but he managed to stand on the water after about 10 minutes. He worked on chakra control a bit longer and then went on to kunai throwing. Well, he was now again on the same, or maybe a bit less, level of chakra control than before the ceiling. He had certainly improved in his kunai throwing. He was able to hit the target's bullseye until he reached a distance of approximately 50 feet. He was also able to hit the target when it wasn't right in front of him. Like the targets hanging in the trees. Because Naruto had been in the clearing alone for 4 days, he was used to the silence. So when there was a sudden rustling of leaves and the noise of a twig breaking behind him, Naruto reacted on instinct. He turned around and threw the kunai he had in his hand in the direction of the noise. Directly at Itachi. Itachi looked surprised but dodged the kunai by rolling to the side right away. He then got up again and stared impassively at Naruto. "Really?" he asked in a monotone voice. Naruto just stood there. Completely shocked at what he had just done. "Itachi. I'm sorry. I wasn't," Naruto tried to explain but somehow wasn't able to. Itachi let go of a sigh. "Don't worry. At least it shows that our training bears fruit." Itachi said and shrugged his shoulders. He then looked at Naruto. He had heard about his sibling from his parents. "It's been a while since we saw each other," Itachi said and walked towards Naruto. He then sat down at the base of the tree behind the blonde. Naruto followed suit. For a while, no one said a thing. Both just stared at the sky. Itachi was the first to break the silence. "How are you?" he asked simply. Naruto turned to the side and forced a smile. "I'm fine." He lied. Naruto didn't really want to lie to Itachi. After all, he had never lied to him. But he had been asked this question so many times and he had always answered with "I'm fine." So it came out automatically. Itachi frowned. "Stop lying. How are you? Really?" Naruto dropped his smile and sighed. Seriously, Naruto then looked up at the sky again. "I'm holding up. Somehow," he stated. "Things are a bit complicated at the moment. Tu-chan is at the office all day and Ka-chan barely moves out of the house. Seeing me makes it even worse, so I try to stay away. But, well, it's not easy." Naruto said and sighed. It did good to talk about it. "I see. I'm sorry about your sibling, Naruto. I don't know what you're going through right now, but if there is something I can do to help, just say it," Itachi said. "Thanks. I appreciate it," Naruto said. "How are things at the compound?" Naruto asked, turning his head to Itachi again. "Well, the casualties of the clan were kept at a minimum. Right now, it's mostly a lot of work at the station," he answered. "Yeah, Mikoto Oba-san told me when she came over last time. Are you alright? I heard your job wasn't quite the easiest," Naruto inquired. "I'm alright. The guys at the office made sure I wouldn't get the people that were looking for dead family members, but those that were looking for injured people in the hospital," he answered. "But say, is the pain gone now?" Itachi asked, curious about the effect of the ceiling. "What are you talking about? You know that they were gone by the time we had reached the shelters," Naruto said. He really wasn't Itachi to worry even more about him. Itachi started to glare at him. He didn't say anything, but his stare did. It clearly said, "Don't you dare lie to me again." Naruto started to laugh sheepishly. "Fine, you got me. I should have known that you were able to look through my act that day, but don't worry. It's gone now. It went away sometime during the night that followed the attack." "And any notable changes so far?" Naruto grinned. "Yep. Turns out I have now a cool healing ability and my chakra reserves have increased by a tenfold or something like that. But my chakra control was messed up pretty badly cause of that," he said and put his hand behind his head. So nothing too bad then. That's good," Itachi said, and then the two were silent for some time again. "Well, I gotta head back. Ka-chan must be getting ready for the funeral by now and I should get changed too. I'll see you later," Naruto asked over his shoulder after he had gotten up. Itachi just nodded. Naruto arrived back at his home at around 9 o'clock. Like Naruto had thought, Kushina was currently getting ready. Minato had come back as well. He just came out of his bedroom, wearing black pants and a black sweater. Kushina also came out in this moment, wearing a black kimono. She held Kei on her hip, who was also all in black. A black jumpsuit. "Naruto, there you are. Please hurry and get changed so we can leave," Minato said to his son and turned back to Kushina and put an arm around her. "Hi," was all he said before he went up to put on his clothes for the funeral as well. Black pants and a black t-shirt. He put on a black hooded jacket over it. He ran downstairs again. "I'm ready." "Good. Let's go," Minato said and stretched out his head to Naruto. This one took it and then they all disappeared in yellow-red flash. They arrived a small distance from training ground 22, where in the last few days, the dead people had been buried and were given a gravestone. The training ground was now the graveyard of the Kyuubi no Kitsune's attack. In the middle of the new graveyard was a big square stone. They all walked into the training ground. Minato at the front. They walked past a lot of people. Almost all of the village was present. Of course, not all were able to fit on the graveyard, but they were dispersed all around it. Minato made a sign that said that Kushina and Naruto were to wait here. Naruto and Kushina stopped and placed themselves next to Tsunade, who was in the front row. Minato arrived in the middle of the graveyard. Right next to the stone. To all of you that have come today. Thank you. Today, we are here to honor the tragic deaths of all the people that have fallen at the power of the Kyuubi no Kitsune 4 days ago. As you all know, the Kyuubi was originally sealed away into my wife, Kushina. And due to unforeseen circumstances, the Kyuubi escaped and attacked the village. The Kyuubi was defeated later on, but nevertheless, the Kyuubi no Kitsune has taken the lives of many people important to us. Our family, our friends or our lover. All of the shinobi that fought the Kyuubi in order to protect the village and all civilian that were not able to escape it shall forever be remembered. Minato stated in a loud voice. He had lied when he told them that the Kyuubi was defeated. But he couldn't tell them that he didn't know what happened and more importantly, where it was. He and Hiruzen had been working their brain off trying to figure out where it went. And why it left in the first place. We have created a memorial stone where all the victims' names shall be engraved. Right now, we still do not have the exact number of deceased and so not everyone's name has been added yet. But they will be engraved as well. Minato said and turned to the stone next to him. He took out a white flower and put it on the grave. He then bowed his head to it. Now more than ever is a time where we have to stick together. The losses we have experienced are felt by everyone. We all lost someone during this attack, but the will of fire of all of them will live in us. He finished his speech and walked back to Kushina. The people then started to walk up to the memorial stone and put a flower, one after the other, onto it. When it was Naruto's turn, he looked at the stone. On top was engraved. To always be remembered and below, all of the names. There were around 500 names on it, but he found the name he was looking for right away. He let his finger glide over it and put his flower down. Akemi Namikaze. Naruto let his gaze wander and stopped when he saw Itachi. He was next to his mother and was talking to her. Minato and Kushina, with Kei in her arm, were currently talking to Tsunade. Naruto-kun. How are you doing? Asked an elderly voice from behind him. Naruto turned around and looked at his surrogate grandfather's face. Jiji, I'm fine. How are you? He lied. I'm fine as well. Hiruzen answered. Naruto sighed. That man could read him like a book. So now that we so greatly lied to each other, Naruto said, and his gaze turned sad. I'm sorry about Bawako Aba-chan. Naruto said with a tear rolling down his cheek. He hurried and wiped it away. Looking towards his parents and letting go of a relieved sigh that they hadn't seen him. Hiruzen looked at the scene with sad eyes. I'm sorry too. I wish I could have done something. Said and crouched down. He looked Naruto in the eyes. You're a strong boy, Naruto. But it is no weakness to cry, you know. He said kindly. I know. I just don't want them to worry. They have enough on their plate as it is. Naruto said glancing at his parents. You're a good boy, Naruto. If you ever need someone to talk to, my home is open anytime. He said with a kind smile and got up again. I need to take care of a few things, Naruto. I'll see you soon I'm sure. He said and slowly walked away. Jana, Jiji. Naruto said and walked over to his parents. Making sure he stood a bit behind them so his mother wouldn't see him. Minato saw him come nearer and smiled a small smile over his shoulder at Naruto before turning around again to continue his talk with Tsunade. Naruto was walking through the street of Konoha. It was shortly past noon. The funeral had ended about 1 hour before. His father had left for his office again and Kushina had accepted Makoto's offer to join her and Hitomi for lunch. So the three women were now at the Uchiha compound to eat lunch. Itachi had joined his father again and was currently working in the office. Even though they had been able to find out exactly what happened to most of the missing shinobi or civilian, there were many missing and many people that were in the hospital but not recognizable or still unconscious. Itachi was put in the group that was to identify the, until now, unknown people in the hospital. So Naruto was now walking around, trying to figure out what to do. He didn't want to train at the moment. Just didn't felt like it. Naruto was walking next to an ally when he heard something that made him stop in his tracks and listen to the conversation. The Hokage really has gotten weak, don't you think? A shinobi asked his counterparty. The shinobi must have been in his mid-30s. He had long brown hair and brown eyes. He was wearing the traditional shinobi uniform. More than that, he actually lied to us. Due to unforeseen circumstances. The other shinobi spit out. He had short black hair and gray eyes. He too was wearing the traditional shinobi uniform. I saw him when he came to the graveyard with Sandaime-sama. His wife was carrying a dead newborn. Obviously she was giving birth that day. He exclaimed. Are you serious, Shin? The brown-haired shinobi asked. I'm telling you Masao. I was just dropping of a young girl that had been crashed against a wall when they both arrived. Shin exclaimed. God, and I might just be a chunin, but I know that the stress of giving birth must have broken the seal. He stated. But his wife has given birth before. And nothing happened then. Masao said. Well, he must have gotten weaker during the years. I don't know, but maybe it's time we should get a new Hokage. What do you mean? Masao asked, surprised. I mean, sure, he probably isn't as strong as before, but he still defeated the Kyuubi. Of course he's strong. But he obviously knew of the dangers of birth, and yet he kept it a secret. We could have prepared for an attack. We could have saved so many lives. My wife and my daughter would still be alive. Damn it. Shin shouted at the end. The anger was written in his face. It's his fault. The Hokage brought this upon us. Shin said now with determination. And Masao's face seemed to agree with him if the expression on his face was any indication for what he felt. Anger was written on both of their faces. The two of them were so absorbed in their conversation that they didn't notice Naruto walking up to them. That's not true. Naruto shouted. What you? Masao said, surprised. Shit. Shin said under his breath. He stared at Naruto. How much did you hear? Shin asked while turning towards Naruto. Du-chan isn't at fault. Naruto shouted, ignoring Shin's question. And who else is at fault then? Care to answer that, you brat? Shin shouted back. Naruto lowered his head. They need a scapegoat. Fine, Naruto then said silently. It's mine. What? I didn't hear you. Shin said. I said. It was my fault. Naruto stated while raising his head and looked straight at Shin. You're right. Tu-chan knew that the seal on Kachan would be weaker. But there was never the danger of the Kyuubi breaking free. Tu-chan had it perfectly under control. But then why did it break free? Answer. Shin shouted, his confidence on Minato being at fault was vanishing with every word Naruto said. And Naruto saw that. Good. He thought and kept on lying. During the delivery, I interrupted my father. I made him lose concentration. That's why the Kyuubi got free. It was my fault. I'm the reason you lost your family. Naruto stated and looked straight into Shin's eyes. That's when Masao jumped into the conversation. Stop lying, brat. You were at the shelters. My daughter said that you and the Uchiha heir were both there and told the people the Kyuubi had disappeared. He stated. Du-chan brought us back after the Kyuubi got free. I met up with Itachi and we headed to the shelters together. Naruto answered confidently. The hate and the anger that were on Shin's face previously and had been directed at Minato were now directed at Naruto. Solely on Naruto. You. Shin shouted and dashed forward, delivering a punch into Naruto's face, who crashed into the wall. Because they were in the alley and most people were currently working on reconstructions elsewhere, no one saw how Shin attacked Naruto. And his attack didn't stop with a punch. He proceeded to kick him in the gut. And soon enough, Masato had joined the beating as well. They kicked him again and again. Naruto noticed the blood that was running out of his mouth. Then, after what seemed to be an eternity, they stopped. You will pay for that. For killing all of these people you will pay. Masao stated. Yeah. Your life will become a living hell from now on. I'll personally take care of that. Shin said and walked out of the alley, followed by Masao, who spit on Naruto when he passed him. Naruto meanwhile was barely conscious, but somehow was able to sit up and lean on the wall. They'll probably go around and tell the people about this at least, they won't blame Tu-chan anymore. Naruto thought before slowly drifting into unconsciousness. Naruto woke up hours later by a lick on his cheek. He looked down to see a small dog. The dog was gray, but had a few patches of black here and there. His ears were both black and he had a brown and a blue eye that were staring into Naruto's. Hey little guy, thanks for waking me. Naruto said and patted the dog's head. The dog answered with a bark. Naruto then slowly started to get up, putting the dog to the side. His ribs hurt really badly. If he was right, some were probably broken. Shit. How am I gonna hide the fact that I can barely move? Naruto thought and looked at himself more, there was almost no blood on him. Maybe I should go ask Bachan for help. Naruto thought and started to walk slowly out of the alley. The dog followed him. Sorry buddy, but I can't take you with me. Naruto said to the dog and crouched down to scratch the dog's ear. Ignoring the pain that shot through his body at the movement. The dog had no tag, so it was most likely a stray dog. Even if I was allowed to take you with me, it would be dangerous for you. People will treat me a lot differently now, so they could try to hurt you too. Naruto said to the dog, who barked and slowly ran down the alley again. Leaving Naruto where he stood. Smart dog. Naruto walked then out of the alley and started to walk down the road, while all the while holding his aching ribs. He made sure that the people he walked past wouldn't see him by hiding in the shadows. He then soon arrived at the hospital and went up to the counter. Excuse me, I'm looking for Tsunade Senju. Naruto stated to the woman that sat at the counter. The woman looked up. She had shoulder-length light brown hair, brown eyes and was wearing a white sweater. Down the hall. Third door on the right. She said and looked down on her papers again. Thank you. Naruto said and started to walk down the hall while holding his ribs. Naruto stopped in front of the door. Tsunade Senju head medic stood on the plaque next to the door. Naruto knocked 3 times and waited. Enter. Was heard from the inside. Naruto walked in. Yo, Bachan. He said cheerfully. Naruto. What are you doing here? She asked surprised. Ah, you see I kinda fell down the stairs and I think I broke some of my ribs. I was wondering if you could take a look. Naruto asked while putting his hand behind his head, regretting that right away as a shock ran through his body and made him wince. Really Naruto? You should be more careful. Tsunade said with a sigh and got up and came forward from behind her desk. She then motioned for Naruto to sit on the table next to her desk. Take off your shirt and then I'll have a look. She said. Naruto did his best to pull off his jacket but needed Tsunade's help in the end to take off both the jacket and his shirt. Tsunade looked at Naruto's abdomen. What, that isn't from falling downstairs. Those are marks from a kick. And there were a lot of them. Tsunade put her palm on Naruto and her hand started to glow green. In that moment there was a knock on the door and then the door swung open. Tsunade-sama, I think I found out who the man with the burn marks on the face in room 106 is. Itachi stated while looking at a clipboard. He then looked up and his eyes widened in surprise. Naruto, what happened? Haha, fell down the stairs. Naruto grinned sheepishly and put a hand behind his head. Ouch, he cried out as Tsunade apparently put something in its place again. You really are an idiot. Itachi stated, but his glare said, you better tell me later. I just wasn't paying attention where I was walking. Naruto said. But his look said sure. Well, and who is that man, Itachi-kun? Tsunade interrupted. Ah. Hi. A civilian. Yukihira Masato. Itachi answered. Alright. Good work. Have his family come and confirm it. Hi. Naruto, I'll see you later. Naruto knew that Itachi wouldn't keep quiet until he knew what had happened, so the two would meet later, meaning at midnight, in their clearing. Donna. Ouch. Bachan, that hurt. Naruto said to Tsunade, who just ignored it. After Tsunade was done, Naruto got up and pulled his shirt back on. It still hurt, but not as much as before, so he was able to put on his cloth on his own. Thanks, Bachan. And could you please do me a favor? Naruto asked. Depends on the favor. What do you want, Gaki? Tsunade asked after she sat down behind her desk again. Well, I wanted to ask you to not tell my parents about this. Naruto asked sheepishly. They have enough on their plate right now without having to worry about me, Naruto said. Using the same line he had used with Hiruzen. Tsunade looked at Naruto for a moment. He's hiding something. But why? Tsunade thought and looked at him. Alright, Naruto-kun. I won't tell them. But if something like this happens again, I'll tell them. Tsunade stated. She then took out a book and started writing in it. Thanks, Bachan. Naruto said with a goofy grin. Then he looked at the book that Tsunade was writing into. Bachan, what is that? That is your medical file. Everyone that comes into the hospital has one. The medic nin writes down the injuries and the treatment of the patient and whatever the medic deems important enough to write down. Tsunade answered and finished her writing. But Bachan, how is someone supposed to read your writing? It looks encrypted. Naruto asked as he had appeared behind Tsunade and was looking at the book. You brat. Get out now before I change my mind and throw you out. Tsunade said in a playful angrily tone. Haha. Then, thanks again. And see you soon. He added and ran out of the door. Stupid Gaki, I have to keep an eye on him, Tsunade thought after she watched Naruto leave. Naruto had gotten home late that evening. He had missed dinner, so he was expecting some kind of scolding from his parents. But when he came into the house, Minato was already tidying up the table and Kushina had apparently gone back to the nursery. Ah, Naruto. There you are. Sorry, we ate without you. There's still something in the fridge if you're hungry. Minato said and brought the dishes into the kitchen to wash them. Ah, sure. Thanks, Naruto said and followed his dad in the kitchen. Minato washed the dishes real fast and then turned to Naruto. I need to head out again. Don't stay up too late. Minato said and went upstairs to tell Kushina. Naruto stayed in the kitchen to eat his dinner, some rice and vegetables, and then went up to his room. He went to the nursery and went to his mother. Ah-chan, sorry for being late for dinner, he said. Naruto. It's okay. Kushina said and smiled at Naruto. It wasn't the big smile she used to give him. But at least, she didn't start crying when she saw him now. I'll be going to bed now. Good night, Ka-chan. Naruto said and left the nursery to go into his room. Good night. Was her answer. Naruto went into his room and activated his silencing seals. He then laid down on his bed. He had a meeting tonight. So he wanted to sleep a bit before that. Naruto had just slipped out of his window and was now running through the village into the clearing where he was supposed to meet Itachi. He arrived in the clearing at the stroke of midnight. There was a full moon that lighted the clearing and Naruto saw that Itachi was already there, leaning against a tree. "Yo." Naruto greeted and raised his hand. Itachi just nodded in greeting. "How are your rips?" Itachi asked. "They're fine. They don't even hurt anymore." The blonde answered and hit his ribs once to prove that he was telling the truth. "Good. Now how did you broke your ribs?" Itachi asked, getting straight to the point. His voice made it clear he wanted to hear the truth. Naruto sighed. "Today, when I was strolling through the village, I heard two shinobi talking. They were talking about the Kyuubi attack and how Two-chan lied to them. One of them saw that Two-chan brought Akemi to the training ground and kind of figured out that the Kyuubi broke out because of the stress the birth put on Ka-chan," Naruto said. "Anyway, they were basically blaming Two-chan for all the deaths," Naruto said with furrowed brows. "That's bad. If people start to mistrust your father, things could get ugly," Itachi stated worriedly. "That's what I thought too. That's why I told them that it was my fault," Naruto said and looked at Itachi's reaction. Itachi started but then thought about it. He then sighed. "So they believed you and then they took it out on you?" Itachi asked. "Pretty much," Naruto said. Itachi looked up at the sky. "That was a good choice. If people were to start a rebellion or something it would be seriously bad." He then looked at Naruto. "But will you be able to handle it? You basically just took the blame for the death of over 500 people." Naruto then turned to Itachi. And smiled. A real smile. "That's okay. The people need a scapegoat. So I'll be it. I mean, because of the Kyuubi, I have a real good healing ability too. So even when I get hurt, I'll be fine in no time again." Dadabeo, Naruto said and then looked at the sky again. "And I was able to help Two-chan," Naruto said with the smile still on his face. What if ANBU Naruto parents return with sister? And thanks for watching my video till the end. If you enjoy this content, then do consider subscribing to my channel and leave a like if you guys need the next part, comment down and thanks for watching the video and see you guys in the next video.